Hey guys, I'm going to be reading Let It Snow by David Sedaris. You have to go into reading something like Let It Snow, understanding that everything's really, really sarcastic. He's supposed to be funny. If you try to read David Sedaris and you're trying to think of it as being something that's like a serious piece, you'll probably lose a lot of the meaning. So just keep that in mind as you're reading. He's still alive and kicking. He's probably like maybe your grandparents' age. And he's pretty popular as a comedian among people that age, as well as a writer. And so, what this story is about is like back in the 60s when he was a kid growing up in North Carolina, they ended up getting a bunch of snow days. And this is the story of what they did, him and his brothers and sisters, when he was like 10 years old on a snow day. Winters were frustratingly mild in North Carolina, but the year I was in the fifth grade, we got lucky. Snow fell, and for the first time in years, it accumulated. School was canceled, and 2 days later, we got lucky again. There were 8 inches on the ground, and rather than melting, it froze. On the fifth day of our vacation, my mother had a little breakdown. Our presence had disrupted the secret life she led while we were at school, and she could no longer take it, and she threw us out. It wasn't a gentle request, but something closer to an eviction. "Get the hell out of my house," she said. We reminded her that it was our house too, and she opened the front door and shoved us into the carport. "And stay out," she shouted. My sisters and I went down the hill and sledded with the other children from the neighborhood. A few hours later, we returned home, surprised to find that the door was locked. "Oh, come on," we said. I rang the bell, and when no one answered, we went to the window and saw our mother in the kitchen watching television. Normally, she waited until 5 o'clock to have a drink, but for the past few days, she'd been making an exception. Drinking didn't count if you followed a glass of wine with a cup of coffee, and so she had a goblet and a mug positioned before her on the countertop. "Hey," we yelled, "open the door, it's us." We knocked on the pane, and without looking in our direction, she refilled her goblet and left the room. "That bitch," my sister Lisa said. We pounded again and again, and when our mother failed to answer, we went around back and threw snowballs at her bedroom window. "You're going to be in so much trouble when Dad gets home," we shouted, and in response, my mother pulled the drapes. Dusk approached, and as it grew colder, it occurred to us that we could possibly die. It happened, surely. Selfish mothers wanted the house to themselves, and their children were discovered years later, frozen like mastodons and blocks of ice. My sister Gretchen suggested that we call our father, but none of us knew his number, and he probably wouldn't have done anything anyway. He'd gone to work specifically to escape our mother, and between the weather and her mood, it could be hours or even days before he returned home. "One of us should get hit by a car," I said. "That would teach the both of them." I pictured Gretchen, her life hanging by a thread as my parents paced the halls of Rex Hospital, wishing they had been more attentive. It really was the perfect solution. With her out of the way, the rest of us would be more valuable and have a bit more room to spread out. "Gretchen, go lie in the street." "Make Amy do it," she said. Amy, in turn, pushed it off on Tiffany, who was the youngest and had no concept of death. "It's like sleeping," we told her, "only you get a canopy bed." Poor Tiffany. She'd do just about anything in return for a little affection. All you had to do was call her Tiff, and whatever you wanted was yours. Her allowance, her dinner, the contents of her Easter basket. Her eagerness to please was absolute and naked. When we asked her to lie in the middle of the street, her only question was, "Where?" We chose a quiet dip between two hills, a spot where the drivers were almost required to skid out of control. She took her place, this 6-year-old in a butter-colored coat, and we gathered on the curb to watch. The first car to come along belonged to a neighbor, a fellow Yankee who had outfitted his tires with chains and stopped a few feet from our sister's body. "Is that a person?" he asked. "Well, sort of," Lisa said. She explained that we'd been locked out of our house, and while the man appeared to accept it as a reasonable explanation, I'm pretty sure he was the one who told on us. Another car passed, and then we saw our mother, this puffy figure walking awkwardly and negotiating the crest of the hill. She did not own a pair of pants, and her legs were buried to the calf in snow. We wanted to send her home, to kick her out of nature just as she had kicked us out of the house, but it was hard to stay angry at someone that pitiful looking. Are you wearing your loafers? Lisa asked, in response to our mother raised a bare foot. I was wearing loafers, she said. I mean, really, it was there a second ago. This is how things went. One moment she was locking us out of our own house, and the next we were rooting around in the snow, looking for her left shoe. Oh, forget about it, she said. It'll turn up in a few days. Gretchen fitted her cap over my mother's foot. Lisa secured it with her scarf, and surrounding her tightly on all sides, we made our way home.